In January 2010, Google made an announcement that quietly changed the rules of the internet. There was no product launch, no keynote, no stock market spectacle, just a short blog post published almost modestly, admitting something that until then sounded unthinkable. Google had been hacked, not by criminals chasing money, not by a rogue employee, but by a nation-state. At the time, that sentence alone felt unreal. Tech companies were hacked by teenagers, by cyber-criminal gangs, by pranksters. Governments hacked other governments. That was the assumption. What followed wasn't just a security incident. It was the moment cyber warfare stepped out of classified intelligence briefings and into public view. This wasn't a smash-and-grab hack. There were no ransom notes, no website defacements, no immediate outages, nothing that would trigger panic in a newsroom or a stock exchange. Instead, the attackers moved like ghosts. They exploited a single zero-day vulnerability, a flaw so new and unknown that no security patch existed and no antivirus could detect it. Once inside, they navigated Google's internal systems quietly, methodically. They harvested source code. They mapped internal documentation. They attempted access to Gmail accounts. They stayed hidden for months. This wasn't noise. It was patience. And Google wasn't alone. At least 20 major corporations, including Adobe, Intel, Yahoo, Juniper Networks, and multiple defense contractors, were compromised in the same coordinated campaign. The operation had a name: Operation Aurora. Behind Aurora was a new kind of adversary, one that didn't see cyberspace as plumbing or infrastructure but as terrain, one that viewed information not as data but as leverage. This was the first large-scale cyber-espionage campaign that openly pitted a government against a private technology giant. The first time a company like Google publicly accused a country of hacking it, and the moment many historians now point to as the beginning of the modern cyber arms race between China and the West. To understand how this began, rewind a few weeks. It's late December. Most of Google is on holiday. The sprawling campus is quiet. Offices are dark. Cafeterias are closed. Only a skeleton crew remains to keep systems running. You're one of the engineers still working, tasked with testing compatibility on legacy systems. Millions of users around the world still rely on outdated software, so Google has to ensure its products don't break. You're using Windows XP, Internet Explorer 6. Old tools, old risks. You open Gmail. You click a link. Nothing crashes, no warning appears. But in that instant, something irreversible happens. You didn't just open an email, you opened history. To grasp why this mattered so much, you have to remember what Google represented at the time. This was Google in its idealistic phase. Gmail had launched to the public only a few years earlier. The company had fewer than 25,000 employees. Offices felt experimental, not corporate. Don't be evil wasn't ironic yet. It was identity. Google wasn't just another ad company. It was becoming the nervous system of the internet. Its search engine processed billions of queries every day. Its email platform stored private conversations of journalists, activists, CEOs, scientists, and political dissidents across the world. And buried deep inside its internal systems was something more valuable than any revenue stream: its source code, the blueprint of how modern information flowed. Operation Aurora didn't break in through brute force, it slipped inside. The attackers exploited a zero-day vulnerability in Internet Explorer that allowed remote code execution simply by loading a malicious web page. That code installed a Trojan, later known as Hydra. Hydra created a backdoor, established persistence, and deleted traces of itself. From there, the attackers escalated privileges and moved laterally through Google's internal network. They didn't rely on exotic tools alone. they abused trust. They used MSN Chat, an internal communication tool, to send infected links between employees. Firewalls didn't stop them. Antivirus software didn't see them. This wasn't negligence. Zero-day exploits are the nuclear weapons of cyberspace. Rare, expensive, and almost exclusively used by governments. At the time, zero-day vulnerabilities could sell for hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars on private exploit markets. Finding one required elite research talent, time, and funding. Using one meant burning it forever. Once exposed, it would be patched. That meant Aurora wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. And the most terrifying part was this: even perfectly updated systems would have fallen. There was no patch to apply, no security policy to follow. If you were targeted, you were compromised. That realization shattered long-held assumptions about cybersecurity overnight. Google was only one target among many. More than 20 organizations across technology, energy, finance, chemical manufacturing, and defense were breached. Adobe, Yahoo, Intel, ExxonMobil, Northrop Grumman, Dow Chemical, Morgan Stanley. Companies that had never imagined they could be treated as military targets suddenly were. This wasn't cybercrime. No one was stealing credit cards. No money was demanded. This was espionage. Long-term access, strategic positioning. Corporations had become battlefields in a conflict most of them didn't even know they were part of. For years, hacking had been wrapped in cyberpunk mythology, lone rebels, hoodie-wearing geniuses, anti-corporate vigilantes challenging power with code. Popular culture reinforced it. Movies, games, headlines. But Operation Aurora marked the end of that era. Governments learned from those rebels. They stripped the rebellion out of hacking and kept the techniques. The internet was no longer a playground or a protest tool. It was a domain of warfare. And the people deploying malware weren't punks anymore. They were organized, disciplined, and well-funded. China's role in this shift didn't come out of nowhere. For decades, Chinese military thinkers had written openly about information warfare. By the late 1990s, Chinese strategists were publishing books that argued future wars would be decided by data, networks, and information dominance. These ideas drew heavily from Sun Tzu's concept of Shi, strategic advantage gained by shaping the battlefield before conflict begins. In this worldview, information itself is terrain. Corporations aren't neutral. Technology companies shape global power. Espionage isn't aggression, it's preparation. If you know more than your opponent, you don't need to fight them directly. That mindset explains what the attackers wanted from Operation Aurora. They went after source code because source code accelerates vulnerability discovery. It allows attackers to find 0 days faster than any external scan ever could. After Aurora, researchers noticed something strange. The same group began using an unusually high number of zero-day exploits in later years. In 2011, 3 of the 8 0 days used globally were attributed to them. In 2012, 4 more. That concentration was statistically absurd, unless source code access had changed the game. They also sought long-term access to email systems, particularly Gmail accounts belonging to Chinese dissidents, journalists, and activists. Google later confirmed attempted access to accounts linked to human rights advocates. The attackers probed wiretapping systems to determine whether Chinese intelligence assets abroad were under surveillance. This wasn't about immediate damage or embarrassment. It was about long-term strategic advantage, counterintelligence, and future leverage. The malware used reflected that sophistication. Hydra was modular, stealthy, and effective. But behind it was something even more unsettling. A second backdoor called NAD. NAD was reserved for high-value targets. It used stolen digital certificates to impersonate legitimate software, bypassing trust mechanisms built into Windows itself. It communicated over custom protocols designed specifically to evade detection. Researchers later realized NAD wasn't operated by the same people running Hydra. There were layers, regular operators and elite teams. This wasn't a hacker group. It was an organization. Then came the contradiction. The same command and control servers running this elite operation were also controlling crude malware, fake antivirus scams, amateur keyloggers, barely functional tools that looked like they were written by beginners. It didn't fit the image of a clean, military-grade operation. Two explanations emerged. Either the attackers were testing infrastructure using disposable malware before deploying real weapons, or they had purchased existing cybercriminal infrastructure to mask their activities. Both explanations were unsettling. Operation Aurora wasn't elegant. It was hybrid. Two worlds colliding. Attribution was fiercely debated. Cybersecurity experts warned that attribution was hard, that attackers could plant false flags, but clues piled up. Malware files stored in directories literally named Aurora, a cyclic redundancy check algorithm commonly used in China and almost nowhere else. Early infections traced to Chinese networks. Command servers linked to universities with documented ties to the People's Liberation Army. Later, U.S. intelligence added more context, linking infrastructure to Chinese academic institutions known for training military cyber personnel. Each clue alone could be dismissed. Together, they formed a pattern too consistent to ignore. Then Google did something unprecedented. It went public. In a single blog post, Google revealed the attack, stated that it originated from China, and announced it was reconsidering its entire presence in the Chinese market. This wasn't just transparency, it was a geopolitical statement. A private corporation openly accused a nation-state of cyber-espionage. Media coverage exploded. Governments paid attention. The rules had changed. China denied the accusations, as expected, but the damage was done. Other companies quietly confirmed similar intrusions. Security researchers connected the dots. Operation Aurora was no longer just Google's problem, it was everyone's. What followed was a new era. Operations like Shady Rat, Night Dragon, and later APT campaigns built directly on Aurora's foundations. Nation-state hacking became normalized. Corporate cybersecurity evolved from IT hygiene into geopolitical defense. Boards of directors began asking questions that used to be reserved for generals and intelligence agencies. The cyber Cold War had begun, quietly, invisibly, and without borders. Operation Aurora still matters because it marked the moment power truly shifted online. It was the transition from experimentation to doctrine, from curiosity to strategy. China didn't invent cyber warfare, but Aurora was when it stepped onto the world stage and stayed there. Today, conflicts don't start with bombs. They start with access, with credentials, with trust abused at exactly the right moment. One employee, one click, and the world's most powerful tech company realized something fundamental had changed forever. The internet was no longer neutral ground, and the most powerful weapons of the modern age don't explode. They log in,